I never thought my own family would lie to my face just to exclude me from something that should have been a shared experience. But that's exactly what happened. I spent years being the responsible daughter, the one who always compromised, the one who gave without asking for anything in return. And what did I get for it? Betrayal. At first, I thought it was just another case of favoritism, something I had come to expect. But as I dug deeper, I uncovered something far worse. My own parents had been deceiving me for years, manipulating me, using me, stealing from me, and they thought I'd never find out. They were wrong. To understand how this all started, you need to know a little about my family. I'm Sophia, 29 years old, and I work in business. I've always been the responsible, independent one, the daughter who didn't need help, the one who could handle things on her own. And then, there's Emma, my younger sister, my parents' pride and joy. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one they always prioritized. It didn't matter what she wanted, if she asked, she got it. Me? I had to earn everything. Growing up, the differences were subtle, almost easy to ignore. Emma got more attention, more praise, but I told myself it was just because she was the baby of the family. But as we got older, the favoritism became impossible to overlook. When it was time for college, I worked my ass off to earn scholarships, juggling part-time jobs to pay my tuition. Meanwhile, my parents fully funded Emma's education, her car, her apartment, everything. I told myself it was okay, I didn't need their help, I could handle things on my own. But then, the family cruise happened, and that's when I realized just how deep the betrayal went. A few months ago, my parents announced that they were planning a family vacation, a luxury cruise. For once, I felt excited. For years, I had felt like an outsider in my own family, but maybe, just maybe, this was an opportunity to change that. Maybe this was their way of making things right. I let myself believe that. I booked my time off work, planned what to pack, and finally felt like I was part of something. Then, the night before the trip, I got a call from my mother, Caroline. Her voice was shaky, filled with forced urgency. Sophia, sweetheart, I have terrible news. My stomach dropped. It's your grandmother, Margaret. She's in the hospital. It's bad, Sophia. You need to go see her, right away. Panic hit me like a freight train. I didn't hesitate. I told her I'd cancel my trip immediately. My mother, acting devastated, just sighed and said, I know, sweetie. We'll go on another trip together someday, I promise. I barely processed her words. In my mind, nothing else mattered but getting to the hospital. I grabbed my keys, rushed out the door and drove straight there. My heart pounding, my hands shaking. But when I got there, my grandmother was fine. I ran through the hospital halls breathless, expecting the worst, only to walk into her room and find her sitting upright, smiling, watching TV like nothing was wrong. She looked at me, confused. Sophia? What are you doing here, sweetheart? I blinked, my brain struggling to process what was happening. Mom called me, I finally said. She said you were in critical condition. My grandmother frowned, clearly just as confused as I was. That's ridiculous. I had a routine checkup today, but I feel fine. I was never admitted. Who told you that? At that moment, something inside me snapped. I had been set up. I tried to keep calm, but my hands were shaking with anger. Mom told me she said you were in the hospital, and that I needed to come right away. Her eyes widened. She was silent for a long moment before she let out a slow, knowing sigh. Oh, Sophia, you have been lied to. My mind was racing. Where were my parents? My sister? If this was a lie then I realized the truth. They were on the cruise. Without me, I sat with my grandmother for hours, talking, unraveling lie after lie, and that's when I learned just how deep the deception went. For years, my parents had been favoring Emma behind my back. They didn't just fund her college, they used my trust fund to pay for it. They lied about not being able to help me financially while they spent thousands on her. They took my inheritance from my grandmother and rewrote her will, cutting me out without telling me. I wasn't just the forgotten child, I was the scapegoat, the one who had been used, discarded, and then lied to so they could continue their perfect little fantasy with their golden child. And this time? They wanted a vacation, without me. They thought I'd never find out. But now I knew everything. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I had spent my entire life being the forgotten daughter, the one they pushed aside while they showered my younger sister with love, attention, and money. But when I found out they had deliberately lied to keep me off the family vacation, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I was going to expose everything. For years, I had accepted my role, the invisible sibling, the one expected to handle things on her own, the one who never asked for help. But not anymore. They had stolen from me, manipulated me, and cut me out of my own inheritance. They had rewritten family history to make it seem like I was never part of the equation, and now it was time to rewrite the truth. I knew my parents, Richard and Caroline, thrived on their public image, and the only thing they valued as much as Emma was their reputation, so I decided to hit them where it hurt the most. Step 1. I went online and posted everything. I didn't hold back. I exposed the favoritism, the financial manipulation, and the blatant lies. I laid out the truth about how they had faked an emergency to exclude me from the family vacation, how they had stolen from my trust fund, and how they had rewritten my grandmother's will behind her back. Step 2. I made sure the post reached the entire family, every relative, every mutual friend, every acquaintance who had once thought my parents were respectable people. They all saw it, and as expected, the comments exploded. Step 3. I reached out to the one person they had underestimated. My grandmother, Margaret. She had always been kept in the dark, fed lies to believe that my parents were acting in her best interest, but when I told her the truth, she was furious. I showed her the financial records, the edited will, the transactions that proved they had stolen my inheritance to fund Emma's life. I watched as realization dawned on her. How they had manipulated not just me, but her as well. "Sophia, this is unacceptable," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "I will not stand by and let them get away with this." And just like that, I had my biggest ally. By the next morning, my phone was blowing up. My mother, Caroline, was the first to call, her voice dripping with forced concern and panic. "Sophia, sweetheart, what are you doing? You're airing out our private family matters to the whole world. This isn't how we handle things. Please take it down. We can talk about this as a family." A year ago, I would have caved. I would have felt guilty, like I was the one in the wrong, but now, I saw through every single lie. "Oh, now we're a family?" I replied, my voice calm. "Where was this family unity when you lied to me about Grandma being sick just to keep me off the cruise?" She stammered, searching for an excuse. I was just trying to protect you. We didn't want you to feel left out." I almost laughed. The irony was sickening. "You didn't want me to feel left out? By lying and literally leaving me out?" I said, "Try again, Mom." Next came Richard, my father, who didn't waste time pretending to be apologetic. His voice was angry, sharp, full of the entitlement I had been forced to tolerate my entire life. "Listen to me, Sophia. Take that post down, now. If you don't expect to get another dime from this family. You'll be completely cut off." I smirked. "Cut off from what, exactly? You already stole my trust fund, my inheritance, and my place in this family. There's nothing left for you to take." The silence on the other end of the line was satisfying. And then, there was Emma. Of course, she couldn't let the attention shift away from her, so she did what she always did. She played the victim. She wrote a long, dramatic post on social media, trying to flip the narrative, talking about how she was devastated by the accusations, how she never asked for special treatment, how she just wanted a happy family. I rolled my eyes. She was good at playing innocent, I'd give her that, but this time, no one was buying it. My post had receipts, screenshots, bank statements, transaction logs. The truth was out, and people weren't falling for Emma's sob story. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the center of sympathy. A week later, I got a call from my grandmother. She had called for a family meeting. My parents, my sister, and I would all be there, and this time, there would be no more lies. When I walked into the room, I saw fear on my mother's face, anger on my father's, and frustration on Emma's. They had been exposed, and they knew it. My grandmother sat at the head of the table, her expression unreadable, but the moment she spoke, her words were final. "Richard, Caroline, you have lied to both me and Sophia for years. You took her money, manipulated my estate, and intentionally kept her out of this family. I will not allow it any longer." My father tried to protest. "Mom, please, you don't understand." "No, Richard," she cut him off, her voice firm. "I understand perfectly. You and Caroline will return every cent that was stolen from Sophia's trust fund, and you will no longer have control over my finances." The color drained from their faces. "But Mom," my mother started, but my grandmother wasn't finished. "Additionally," she continued, "Sophia will be reinstated in my will, and any further attempts to deceive or manipulate her will result in legal consequences." The room was dead silent. And then, Emma, the golden child, the one who had always been untouchable, finally spoke. "Grandma, please, this isn't fair, I didn't do anything wrong." For the first time in her life, she looked defeated. My grandmother turned to her with a look of pure disappointment. "Emma, you benefited from the lies, that makes you just as guilty." She had no response. I sat back, watching it all unfold. After years of being ignored, used, manipulated, I had finally taken back everything they had stolen. And the best part? They did it to themselves. Everything they built, every lie they told, every scheme they crafted, was falling apart. My parents had spent years weaving a false reality, playing the perfect family while they secretly manipulated, deceived, and stole. But now? The truth was out, and there was no way to contain the damage. My parents had always cared more about status than substance, more about appearances than actual integrity, but now? Their reputation was in shambles. After the family meeting where my grandmother publicly exposed them, word spread like wildfire. My relatives, many of whom had blindly believed my parents' lies for years, were furious. Suddenly, everyone started questioning them. If they lied about Sophia's inheritance, what else have they lied about? How much money have they really taken from the family? Were they ever actually struggling, or was it all just a ploy? The social pressure was unbearable, and my parents felt it from every direction. Friends stopped calling, relatives distanced themselves, and even their closest allies started to turn against them. My mother, who once thrived on admiration and praise, was suddenly met with cold stares and judgment. Meanwhile, Emma was no longer untouchable. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the favorite. She had spent years living in a bubble of privilege, believing she could do no wrong, but with the truth out in the open, the special treatment disappeared. My parents, too focused on saving themselves, were no longer covering for her. No more lavish gifts, no more secret trust funds, no more getting bailed out of every mistake. She had lost everything they had worked so hard to protect. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. The consequences were entirely of their own making. For the first time in years, I finally had control over my life again. The legal paperwork was finalized, and I was officially reinstated as the rightful owner of my trust fund. The money that had been stolen from me returned in full. The financial safety net they had taken for themselves now belonged to me. But that wasn't all. My grandmother, furious at the level of deceit, had revised her will, ensuring that my inheritance would go directly to me, with ironclad legal protection that my parents could never touch it again, and the family business, after years of being pushed aside, overlooked, treated as if I was disposable, I was finally recognized as the rightful heir. My parents. They were removed from all financial decision-making. In a single moment, everything they stole had been taken back. They never saw it coming. For the first time in my life, I was free. No more guilt trips, no more manipulation. No more empty promises. I used to desperately seek their approval, to bend over backward, hoping that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, proved myself enough, maybe they'd finally see my worth. But now, I didn't need their approval anymore. Because I finally understood, family isn't about blood, it's about who actually values you, respects you, and treats you with love. And my parents. They were never my real family, they were just people who raised me, but they were never the ones who truly cared. I no longer looked back. And I had my freedom, my future, my peace. And the best part? They had to live with the consequences of their own greed. Family isn't always fair. Sometimes, the people who should love you the most are the ones who take advantage of you. Don't let emotions blind you to the truth. Manipulation often comes disguised as love. The truth always comes out, but only if you have the courage to stand up for yourself. Staying silent only enables those who take advantage of you, but the moment you fight back, the power shifts. No one has the right to take what's yours. Not even family, your hard work, your success, your future. It belongs to you and no one else. If someone tries to take advantage of you, cut them off, protect yourself, and never feel guilty for putting yourself first. You have every right to reclaim what was stolen from you, to set boundaries, and to take control of your own life. Because at the end of the day, family isn't about blood, it's about who respects and values you, and sometimes, the best decision you can make is to walk away and never look back.